In her spare time, they do own a lot of restaurants. And she truly, I'm going to kind of get your interest here, she really does know a lot more about ghosts than the normal person does. I'll just leave it at that. She does love to vote. Tina does love what she's doing. She loves WCR. And we love Tina.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is really an honor for me to be here and to be asked to speak at this event. And I wish you could join me as I walk down memory lane for just a few minutes. I'm not going to take a lot of your time. Elaine sort of took part of my speech in her introduction, so I'm just going to jump into the fact that we're all in sales. All of you as realtors and affiliates, you're all my friends. And I think we all have a common cause, and we both, and all of us, face the same challenges oftentimes. And so all of this leads me here today to my first memory at Women's Council of Realtors. And I would have to look at Miss Mary Lou Gordon for this. If you look around the room, there might be a few other people who can agree with me on this one. When I first became a sales associate, I approached Mary Lou for business, and she informed me that I had to join Women's Council. I wasn't given a choice. But I don't regret it for one moment. Miss Mary Lou is very passionate about Western Division of my board and also Women's Council of Realtors, and she's brought many people into the fold because of her passion about these two organizations. But I've always felt the biggest payoff for Women's Council and for us as affiliates and members themselves is our interaction with our friends every day. And as an affiliate, one of my first memories of actually seeing one of our true heavy hitters in action was Helen Hurt, who, if you know Helen Hurt, she's very candid about everything she says. And it was on an advisory board, and the advisory board was asking her opinion about the Leadership Academy, and she was a little upset because it was going to take away from Women's Council our leadership designation. But in seeing Helen, it gave me the realization that as an affiliate, I had the opportunity to voice my opinion and be heard and live through the experience. But as an affiliate, my perspective of this organization is just a little bit different, because I have so many memories of all of these ladies here. Because from 91 on, I was on many of the committees and was under these presidents. So because of my introduction to WCR, I took an active role in it. I didn't sit on the sidelines. And I believe that's why I'm still a member of WCR, because I did take the reins and go out there and actually get on committees, chair, and work with these fine ladies. And I'll always be grateful for the experiences I had. One of the first memories I have of being actually on a committee where we weren't quite sure how it was going to turn out was one of the picnics. And it was Bev Mills, Betty Stecker, and Maria Leach, and it rained on us, and it was horrible. But out of all that, I just remember being with those three ladies and how much fun we had. I think we even forgot the charcoal. And on one of the style shows, it was a little bit of a train wreck. We had twice the attendees as reservations. We had duplicate lists. Nobody realized it. Everybody fit in, and we had a good time. But afterwards, I remember talking to Emma and Mary Du Bois, and they both just commented on how much fun they had modeling and seeing all those attendees. So my perspective was, oh my gosh, it's a train wreck. Their perspective was, it was a great time, and I really enjoyed the event. So I did think that we look at it a little bit differently, and that's a good thing. And I'm sure most of the past presidents here remember all the past luncheons for past presidents to honor those people. And I think it's a tremendous tribute to our tradition that the vice president always plans that. So the vice president plans this meeting and makes sure goes that extra effort to get the past presidents to attend, to sit at a table and share their experiences. And Julie has done a wonderful job, as Elizabeth did the year past, and each of you has done that. And I think that is something that maybe we take for granted and we don't really sit back and think about. But how awesome is that? Every year you have someone who's going to step into those reins, and they go forth and they put such effort into getting everyone here. And to that, I will also lead into the group picture. Robbie Williams always orchestrates a group picture at 70 minutes. And if I asked you, I would see 90% of hands go up. How many of you have been slid a picture in an envelope from Robbie? They're not always very photogenic, but I have them all in my scrapbook, so I've always appreciated that from Robbie. And I've got memories of so many people here, but I'm just touching on a few of them. And I will have to say that we have evolved. I believe that at some point it was common that we were an organization of ladies, or I think it was a ladies' club is what we were referred to. And I have to look back on that, and I laugh because we have evolved. I can remember the days when all the affiliates ran out and we put flyers into boxes, and that was such a tremendous opportunity for us to go out and meet all these agents and hand them a flyer about a next luncheon. Then we faxed them, and then we phoned everybody to make sure that they received the fax. And then we mailed them a copy just to make sure that they didn't get the phone call or the fax. Now we email. Now we have a website. Now we send out invites. I just to Beth Mills earlier, and I said, did you have any problem making your reservation? She said, no. That's great. Great tribute to what we're doing. We're involving people, and we're making it a little bit more seamless. I'm glad Mona was here today because I can remember, I believe the year was 2000, we purchased a flash drive. It took a board boat to do that. Now we're discussing putting our documents on the cloud. So we are stepping into the next generation. And I always cherish these special friendships. And I joined and I helped with a few committees. But I'm going to retire my title as treasurer this year because I have paid back Elizabeth my debt. Thank you, everyone. I'm so glad that I followed you.
And before I call Robbie up to introduce our featured speaker today, I'd just like to welcome and thank Nieva, our governor, actually, for attending today. So Nieva, would you please stand up just for a moment? At this time, Robbie, could you come up and introduce our special friend and historian? This is Miss Robbie Williams.
Thank you, Julia. Most of us know Dick Nye as a Realtor Association Management. What you may not know is that he is a native of Indianapolis, a Purdue grad with a BA in economics and an MBA from Indiana University. He wanted to see how both of those schools turned out. He earned the Realtor Certified Executive designation and was an inductee into the Almond Smith Association Executive Leadership Society. And he successfully passed the Series 65 exam for Investment Advisor Representative. From 1964 to 80, Dick was Vice President of Economic Development for the Indianapolis Chamber of Commerce. From 1980 to 89, he was Executive Vice President of my board. Many of you will know, and many of you may not know, that my board was located downtown on Pennsylvania Street at Market, in the basement. We had to pay to park, so whenever we attended a 9 o'clock meeting, we would sit in our cars because we could not be on the street and park before 9 o'clock. We had to feed the meter. So I guess you could say that Dick was trying to think of what can I do about this, so we could get to meetings timely and also not have to park. He put us from the basement to 1912 North Meridian. You didn't know you were responsible for taking us from the basement to 1912 North Meridian.
I thought I just followed.
Dick left my board in 1989 and served as Executive Vice President of Indiana Association of Realtors from 1990 to 2006. After 42 years in association management with semi-retirement thoughts, in 2007 he left the state association and joined Capital Strategies, where he is now Director of Client Relations. Dick is an active volunteer with his church, Good Shepherd United Methodist, as lay speaker, Franklin Township Chamber of Commerce Economic Development Committee, Zoning and Land Use, Civic League, and the Board of Directors of Little Lambs Children's Ministry. He and his wife Sue, and Sue is a retired realtor, who worked very closely with our beloved WCR past president, Joanna Walker. Dick and Sue have 5 children and 14 grandchildren. They live on the southeast side of Indianapolis. I recall a few years back, I was selling items for Women's Council. As you know, I sold a lot. And I asked him how many grandkids did he have that were under 12. I think there were 4 or 5. So I said, Dick, I need you to write a check. And he said, what for? And I said, there's a gift, that I want you to give to Sue. You remember this? A gift that I want you to give to Sue. And he said, well, what is it? And I said, just write me the check. And it was $75 or $85 a day, 85. And he said, well, what is it? And I said, just write the check. Dick, it's going to Women's Council of Realtors and it's fundraising. So, and I didn't have this item with me at the time. So I took it to his office, and they were T-shirts. Remember the T-shirts that I had that said, my grandma is a realtor? Dick laughed, and I said, take it to Sue and those grandkids, let them wear it. After all, we're advertising. Dick has always been a friend and a supporter of Women's Council of Realtors, whether at my board or at IR. And being a good friend of Women's Council, we're grateful for that friendship. So please put your hands together. Warmest welcome for Dick Nye.
Should I write the check now or later?
I like that.
Thank you, Robbie. She is right. I can't count how many times, especially after I went to the State Association, I'd see Robbie coming across the room, and just a reflex, I'd just reach in my pocket. Because there was always a project or something going on, and it was that was okay. I appreciate her enthusiasm for the organization and for the Realtor family. Thank you so much for letting me come back and reminisce with you. It's great to come and get a free meal and get to talk and to be with folks I don't get to see very often anymore. It doesn't seem possible that I've been gone from the association now almost 8 years. And as I was looking over the room, and a lot of familiar faces, but also a lot of faces that I had never seen before. And that's good. That's a tribute to this organization and the dynamic organization that it is. My assignment, because I knew when Robbie called me and said, would you come, I would get an assignment, which I did, and it's an easy one. Now I want to make a disclosure, and because all of you as realtors are very familiar with disclosures, that there may be some folks in the room that I've worked with and I don't mention you today. And I apologize ahead of time. Others of you have made the proper payment and I won't mention you. But there are a few that I wanted to highlight and talk about, and so if I don't mention you, please forgive me in advance. In your program, there's a little history of the Women's Council. I want to enlighten on that just a bit and expand on it, and then I want to talk about a few people, and I'm very aware of the time that you've had your lunch and realtors are ready to get back to work. I understand that. 1938, the Women's Council was formed by the National Association of Real Estate Boards at that time, at the national level. And in a number of states, women were already active, particularly on the East Coast and West Coast. In the heartland, that was not the case. It was a little bit tougher sledding in this part of the world. In 1947, women were admitted to membership in, at that time, the Indianapolis Real Estate Board. The first lady to join was a lady by the name of Catherine Winchester. She became the first female realtor in Indianapolis. In 1954, Margaret Evans became the first woman realtor owner of a brokerage. 1955, Mary Merrick became the first woman to serve on the board of directors of the Indianapolis Board. In 1964, the Women's Council was formed. You've already heard about Helen Hurt, and I'm going to speak about her in a minute, and my relationship with her over the years, especially that I was at my board. And there was a group then that became the charter members, and they're listed in your program. And what you may not know is that group of charter members was one of the largest charter member classes of any Women's Council organization in the entire nation, which I think is sort of indicative of what was going to happen through Women's Council in Indianapolis. In 1974, Helen Hurt became president at the national level of the Women's Council. And as it was mentioned, she was later followed by Lee Birch in that same position. 1975, a watermark year in the history of the Metropolitan Indianapolis Board of Realtors. Helen Hurt became the first president who was female. And all kinds of things, all kinds of glass ceilings shattered. Ed French's outing was never the same. As Helen, and many of you will not know about this, and it will sound like ancient, oh my gosh, what were they doing? Well, just remember what time of the year it was and when it was. Ed French was a prominent businessman in Indianapolis, and he always hosted all of the male realtors at his home. And it wasn't as rowdy as you might think it was, but there were a lot of card playing, and a little adult beverages were consumed over the course of the afternoon, and he had this great spread. And one of the traditions was that at the time for the party to really begin and have lunch, the president of the Indianapolis Board and then the Metropolitan Indianapolis Board would ring a bell. He had a big bell on a tower. Well, you can imagine Helen was elected president. Of course, the first question was, is Helen even going to come to the stag outing? Well, that was a no-brainer. Helen was there. Okay, the next question was, is Helen going to ring the bell? Well, Helen had them because it was up. You had to climb a ladder, and then you rang the bell. Helen had them boost her up on the old platform, and she rang the bell. And I think I can safely say my board was never the same. In a lot of good ways. In a lot of good ways. In 1983, Pat Pensick became the first female president of the Indiana Association of Realtors. Now you're probably saying, well, why are you recalling all that? What's the point? Well, the point is, number one, I know some of those players and knew some of those players, and they're very special to me. But secondly, I think it's important that when we get to landmarks like 50 years, it's good to pause and look back and realize we have what we have, and we are what we are because of those folks who were unafraid to step out and pave the way. And today we kind of chuckle about it. We don't even think about it, that there would be these barriers. But there were those barriers. And there are barriers still today, and the lesson for us is, okay, who do I have a responsibility for to make the way so that they can be a part of the organization and can succeed in the industry? So it's good to pause and remember that, not build monuments and hang out there, but to pause and realize that's my heritage. Somebody made it possible for me. I need to make it possible for someone else. So if you don't remember anything else, I hope you'll remember that, and I'll get off my soapbox on that, okay? Let me recall just some things that I remember and that I so appreciate. Helen Hurt. I remember the first week that I went to work at my board, in the lower level, by the way, Robbie, we never refer to it as the basement. Lower level. At 107 North Pennsylvania and the Investors Trust Building. And every time we had a big rain downtown and the sump pumps failed, we had about, that much water in the lower level of the Investors Trust Building. And the dumpster for the Steak and Shake was right outside our back door in the lower level. It was a great place. A lot of ambience. But I remember about the first week that I was there, they had just gone through the first conversion to a computerized MLS. R.L. White was a book publisher. And they decided to get in the computer business because it was coming. Well, R.L. White was a great book publisher. They were a terrible computer company. And this thing had only been running a short time, and it just crashed completely. And a company by the name of PRC came in, kind of put the pieces back together. PRC, on the other hand, knew nothing about multiple listings, about real estate. They knew computers, but they didn't know anything about the business. So we were going through that just after I arrived. And Helen, every Monday, when traditionally the new books would have been delivered over the weekend, the new book was there, and the new listings would appear in the computerized thing. And Helen had this habit of bright and early, every Monday morning, checking every new listing that had come on the market to make sure that all the data was correct. And I don't mean she just scanned it to see if there were obvious errors. It was whether streets were abbreviated correctly, the whole 9 yards. And she would either call or many times would come into our office with the list of corrections to give to our MLS staff, who then went online and corrected those, and then notified the brokers of record, you've made errors, and they got fined for not putting the right information in. And so I remember so well, the lady who handled our MLS, her first name was Marcy, and she said, Dick, Helen's going to be here. And I wasn't sure, this is my first week. And I said, okay, Helen who? And she said, what do you mean who? Helen Hurt. Oh, okay, fine. I haven't had the chance to meet her since I've come on board, and so I'll look forward to that. And so somebody came and told me, the receptionist came and told me, Mrs. Hurt is here. And I said, okay, and she's in the MLS office. So I went in and introduced myself to Helen. And it was just a classic moment for me. I will never forget, because I was kind of full of myself about, I got this great new job. I'm in charge of this. This is so cool, And I can remember walking in and introduced myself to Helen, and she was sitting in a chair. She had just finished up going over the list and everything, and she just sort of sat there and just kind of gave me the old once-over. So you're the new executive officer? Yes, ma'am. I was smart enough to say, yes, ma'am. Well, we'll see how that works out. Now, over the years, I came to so respect and love her. The thing that I will always remember about Helen Hurt was her integrity. You knew where you stood with Helen, and as long as you were honest with her and where you stood, everything was going to be okay. Might not see eye to eye, might not agree, might have some pretty lively conversations, but as long as you didn't blow her any smoke, you let her know exactly where you were, and you kept that and stayed in that position, everything was okay. And I so appreciated all that Helen did. She, in my opinion, she really should have been the first president of the woman president of the Indiana Association of Realtors. But the politics and all that didn't work out. But my life was better, I can tell you, for having worked with her and known her. Lee Birch. Lee Birch was the Biff Ward of her day. This lady sold real estate in Indianapolis to who tied a pup. Just outstanding, outstanding. And became a national president of the Women's Council and was very active at the national level. And she was one of these individuals when she came into the room, you just sensed this is a national officer. She just had that presence about her. And what a grand lady she was. Wanda Grabner. Wanda Grabner, and I can't usually talk about Wanda Grabner without talking about Delbert Ludlow, because they were a team. I never saw one without the other, hardly ever. But both of them introduced me to the National Association of Realtors. I had no clue what was going on at the national level. It was so foreign to what I had been a part of at the Chamber of Commerce. And Wanda and Delbert took me by the hand almost literally and led me through my first 2 or 3 National Association meetings to learn what was going on there and what we had to do to find our place as a local board. And I just so appreciate Wanda's involvement. What a tribute. She's a charter member of this organization and still active in the business. What a tribute. What a treasure. And I thank her for all the wonderful things that she helped me to understand and see at the national level, and for her involvement over all the years. Then I come to someone else who's very special, Eleanor Glickstein. Eleanor was on the board. I can't remember whether, Eleanor, you were on the board when I was hired. I can't remember, but you came on the board very shortly thereafter, if I remember right. And Eleanor, I found just so challenging, because Eleanor never took anything that anybody said without, how come? Why? Why is that? And at first, I was a little put off by that, because, hey, I'm the executive officer. Don't you get this? And then I realized, no. She's not challenging you. What she's trying to see, is this the best thing to do? Is this the right thing to do? Are these things correct? And because of that, I made sure I really prepared before I went into a board meeting, because I knew she'd challenge me, and I really appreciate that, Eleanor. I appreciate that she always had the interest of all the folks out there on the street that she had been elected to represent. And I appreciate that so much. Jane Stedman, a sweetheart. I don't know how else to describe her. She was always so gracious. She was one of those folks that when there was work to be done, she was there, and it didn't matter whether you put her name in the program or not. Whatever needed to be done, she was there, and just always so gracious and kind, and I so appreciated her. Joanna Walker. Joanna Walker was about this tall. Even I'm probably exaggerating. Bless her heart. She was my wife's mentor at Tucker, as Robbie mentioned. That lady knew more about what was going on in the organization and how you got things done than anybody I think I ever encountered. if I wasn't sure about how to approach certain things, Joanna was one of those on my list that I always called. She also was one of the first realtors I encountered who was really politically active, and she was. And helped me to understand how important that was, and especially as RPAC began to build and become what it is today, she was one of the stalwarts in that. And I just so appreciated all that she did, and always had this great attitude, and it was just a joy to be with. One of my favorite moments was going to a Willie Nelson concert up in Maryville. It was a state convention, and Willie Nelson was there. And some of you may know Norm McLean. Norm McLean and Joanna Walker and I were sitting in the same row, and Willie was performing and had his whiskey sitting on the stage, and and Joanna was really into it. She was a Willie fan, and she just was enjoying it. And at one point in the show, she just, "Oh, Willie!" And I will never forget that moment. And Norm McLean wouldn't let her live it down from that point on either. But she was just so enthused, and that's the way she was. And I just so appreciate that. Lorraine Ward. Lorraine Ward is one of those individuals that's a real hero to me. It won't ring a bell with many of you unless you got into the business in the 1980s. In 1980, I came to work in May. By January of 1981, we had lost half our membership. I was questioning my career move. Bob Fackler was president in 1980, Steve Hokanson in 1981. In 1982, Tom Prohl stepped up when no one else would. Everybody was worried about whether they're going to be in business the next day, let alone worrying about being president of the board. The following year was not any better. And Lorraine Ward stepped up and was president of the Metropolitan Indianapolis Board of Realtors through one of the toughest years that you could imagine in the business. And I appreciate that so much, and her dedication and her willingness, because I can't imagine what it cost her in her own business to take care of the business of all the realtors at that point. And I really appreciate that, Lorraine, very much. And then there's Beth Blake. I met Beth when I was first interviewed because she was part of the selection team. That's where I first got to know her. And the thing that struck me about Beth was here was this little person, but the energy that it just came out of her ears, this energy, and a smile and a positive attitude about things. We can work this out. We can do this. And I so appreciate that. And believe me, in 81, 82, 83, 84, and 85, that's about all we had. That and our Yes You Can buttons that some of you will remember. We were desperate. You cannot imagine. You cannot imagine unless you were there. Now, the other thing that Beth helped me to learn, she introduced me to New Orleans. National Association was in New Orleans. I'd never been there before. And Beth and some of her friends took me in hand and showed me the town. They started out by driving the wrong way on a one-way street. I thought my days were numbered. I was introduced to the French Quarter and Bourbon Street with Beth Blake. And I will never remember, I just can never forget. I can see it as if I was there right at this moment. We were walking down Bourbon Street, and any of you have ever been there, you know what all going on, and what, there isn't anything that isn't going on there. And we're walking along, and in some of the places the doors were swinging, but they were high enough off the ground that you could almost see in. Well, Beth's so close to the ground, she could definitely see it. And she's walking along, and all of it says, "Oh my God, would you look at that?" And she grabs me, and I won't describe what we saw on the stage, but after that, she was my tour guide. But I just so appreciate it, and she's one of those that's been so involved in the association, and one of those, whenever there's something to be done, "Beth, could you help us?" And I appreciate that, Beth, and I have fond, fond memories. Robbie Williams. What can I say? All I have to do is say Robbie Williams. You know. But the thing I really appreciate about Robbie, there's two things. Number one, her enthusiasm for the organization. Never ashamed to ask somebody, "You ought to be a member. You ought to be a member." And that speaks volumes to me. And secondly, always pushing and saying, "Why can't we do this? Why can't we involve this group? Why couldn't we be a part of that?" When it wasn't necessarily popular to ask that or to push that way. And I appreciate that, Robbie, very much. I would describe her as many times the conscience of the Metropolitan Indianapolis Board of Realtors and the Indiana Association of Realtors. Shirley Wendling. Shirley was the last president that I served with at my board before I went to the Indiana Association of Realtors. And we had so many good times at meetings. We had a great leadership team that year, and she made that transition for me so very easy. And I appreciated the leadership that she brought as we transitioned, as we went from one person and the way they did things, and then making the way for the next person who was going to come in. In that case, it was Steve Sullivan. And Shirley, I appreciate that very much. Gloria Bolger. Gloria, I have just a great deal of respect for Gloria and her business savvy and the way she approached things. And she was another one of those individuals when sometimes I struggled with what should we be doing? I need to talk to folks who are out there running the business and know what's going on. And I need to just have somebody that'll just tell me up front, "No, Dick, that is the stupidest idea you have ever come up with. What are you guys thinking about down there?" Or would say, "That makes some sense, but here's what you ought to do." And Gloria was one of those individuals. And I appreciated her leadership and all that she did for the association. I could go on and on and on. Somebody asked me right after I retired, did I miss it? I said, I don't miss the politics. I don't miss a lot of the stuff. But what I do miss are the people. Because there have been all these special people that I had the opportunity and the blessing to work with. I had very little to do with moving from the lower level to 1912 North Union Street. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Steve Hokinson, Steve Streetbeck, Beth Blake, folks who had the courage to say, "Let's do it. Let's do it." Wow. And I got to be there and be a part of it, and I'm so thankful. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention three other people. Three other people who weren't realtors, but who I think probably this organization owes a great deal to. The first one's Mary Binford. I never had the privilege of knowing Mary Binford. But Mary Binford did so much, especially in the area of education, and pointing out how very important that was to the industry, and set the stage for one of the key elements of what Women's Council is all about. And she could have run a major corporation from everything I've seen and read and heard about her. The other two I worked with. Verna Gracie Thompson. Now, there was a proponent of Realtors and Women's Council. She was always there when something needed to be done. She taught me a whole lot about the real estate industry and about the people who made up the industry, and what a dedicated person she was for the association. She loved realtors. If you cut her veins, they bled realtor blue. She just loved realtors, and she especially loved to throw a party. And oh my, what she did for the organization. Most of it, never got a plaque for it, never got her name in the program, but she caused it to happen. And finally, a lady by the name of Lucy Duncan. Lucy was the secretary for the executive officer for years and years. She also was the editor of the little newsletter we put out every week. Some of you have heard this story, but it was so indicative. When I first came there, my first day, and I was talking to Lucy, and I said something about it, and I did not pronounce the word realtor correctly. And Lucy, in her kind, gentle way, she truly was a lady in the best sense of that word. And she said, Dick, could we go in your office? Gosh. And of course, when she said it, it sounded just like my mother. I could hear my mother saying, Richard. And I'm thinking, oh man, I haven't been here an hour and I've messed this up already. And I mean, I just knew she had something very serious to say to me. And we went in the office. She closes the door, which shows you what a lady she was. Because she said, Dick, the word is pronounced realtor. There isn't an A in there, where you put it. Oh. And she says, if you're going to work for the organization, you really want to pronounce their name right, don't you? Very kindly. But you see, she was such a lady. Rather than telling me that in front of other staff members or anybody else or a member that might have walked in, and after that, we had a great, great relationship. I trusted Lucy Duncan with my life. She just was a special person. And realtors, oh, I can't tell you how many presidents she made look good. How many things she caught and corrected, and nobody ever knew it. In a lot of cases, I didn't even know it. Because she just cared for realtors. And she wanted you all to look good. Now, those are three people that none of you will ever have the privilege of knowing. I had the privilege of knowing two of them. Let me just say to you, thank you so much. Somebody where I work, it's a very small office, there's only three of us, and I'm a part-timer. And I said, I won't be here over lunch hour today. I'm going to make a little presentation at a group, and asked, well, what is it? And I explained and so forth. And I said, yeah, they need some old guy to come and reminisce for half an hour. And they're going to let me do it, so I will take that opportunity. But I just want to say to you, thank you for this opportunity. Women's Council, I remember in the mid-90s, there was this enormous debate at the National Association of Realtors about what's the point of Women's Council? Because at that time, over 65% of the membership was female. And there were a lot of people who questioned, well, shouldn't we, I remember using the term, shouldn't we mainstream them? and I remember some of the folks from Indianapolis who just said, I think you better check how you got your head screwed on. But basically they began to outline, yeah, that's all well and good, and we understand that, but there is a special place and a special purpose that is still served. And when I heard that argument, it really rang true to me, and I think it's as true today as it was the day that argument was had. And that argument went away at the National Association, by the way, obviously. You have the opportunity, ladies, to make the way for the next generation. In in 25 years or 50 years from now, hopefully, it may not be gathered here, but you'll be gathered someplace. And hopefully there'll be people saying, you know, it was because of that I'm in the business. It's because of what they shared with me that I've been successful. That's your heritage, and I also think it really is your mission statement for the future. Again, thank you so much for letting me come and share with you.
Thank you so much, Dick. It's fun walking down memory lane and understanding where we've come from, so it gives us a path to the future. So we really, truly appreciate you being here and sharing some memories with us. Before we keep going here, I've got just a couple more recognitions, and that's our 2014 officers. We already talked about Nieva Shepker. She's our governor for the state for 2014, but we also have our state chapter president, Bobby Noggle. Bobby, you want to start here? Priscilla Russell. So again, you have ladies that continue to serve. And as you mentioned before, we have Janet Jernigan, our former president, and then she's also current president of MIBOR.
Yes.
So we also have our president-elect for MIBOR with us today, and she's also a member of WCR, Kathy Hall. I'm just going to thank our sponsors really quickly, then I'm going to turn this over to Elizabeth for our upcoming events and announcements. For our sponsors today, we have First American Home Buyers Protection, Lori Shoemaker. Thank you, Lori. And it's actually Chase Bank for Jeffra. He's still here. And Ruoff Home Mortgage with Ms. Alango. And now, Elizabeth, would you like to come up and help us with our announcements?
You know, it's wonderful to look out and see this group here. Congratulations, Women Council of Realtors in Indianapolis chapter, 50 years, and it's because of the success and dedication of each person in this room. Thank you for being here today. I'm going to have a note here because I don't want to leave out something. And first of all, I'd like to just announce the upcoming events that are coming. The Region 2 Conference is July the 16th to the 18th, and it is at Union League Club in 65 West Jackson Street, Jackson Boulevard, excuse me, in Chicago. And that is a great event. It's open to all members, so if you would like to go, please go online and get information, or let us know. We'd be glad to send you information. If you can go, believe me, it is a rewarding event. I had the pleasure of going last year to Ohio, and it was my first time, but I really, really enjoyed it. There is no meeting, our regular meeting in July. But on July the 26th, we are having the first family picnic, and it will be at Eagle Creek Park. So we would love to see each of you there with your family. And there is information online about that, and we'll be sending out information. Our next meeting is August the 21st, and it is at MIBOR, and it's going to be about a little bit of back to school. And Dr. Wonder is going to be the speaker, so we hope you'll join us for that. Our annual style show and mini vendors expo and fair is coming up on October the 2nd. So please put that on your calendars and save the date. It's at the Martin House again, and it's just a great time, so don't miss it. And the national conference is November the 5th to the 9th. And it is in that place that you talked about, New Orleans. And it's at the Marriott. So plan to go if you can. I'm sure you'll have a good time. I also wanted to extend to each of you to please come to our meetings And to our past presidents who may not no longer be members, you are welcome to come to our meetings. We have opened that up this year that you know, you're welcome to come more than, because you have the rule of 2 meetings, but you can come to every one of them this year. And we are listening to our past presidents, which is absolutely wonderful. They are giving a presentation, and we have learned so much about the past. And so I hope you'll join us at our meetings there the 3rd Thursday of the month. And you're also welcome to come. Our governing board meetings are open to the membership, and they are on the Mondays after our meetings. And our next governing board meeting is on June the 23rd at my board at 11 o'clock. So thank you each for coming today.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth, for keeping us informed. We have a lot going on, a lot of excitement, and we'd like to keep everybody, look at this room, we're full. So I'd love to keep everybody coming to all our meetings every month. Anyway, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedules to join us today for our historic moment of 50 years for our chapter's history. And again, we thank our past presidents for their service. And I want to, again, just reiterate, you've opened doors for everyone. And as Dick said, it's not just for the women, but for everybody in our industry for the last 50 years. We truly appreciate your service. And we look forward to, again, your mentorship and help to be able to continue this for another 50 years. And again, that's the end of our luncheon, and I appreciate you coming out, and our meeting's adjourned. Thank you so much.